Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing. It is Friday, the 24th of May, or as the kids say these days, match day -1. I'm joined by Joshua this morning. How's it going, Joshua?
Good, yeah. Big game tomorrow, Derek. Obviously, looking forward to it. I can't say that the news that emerged last night about Ridvan did much to build optimism that Rangers will get a victory. But yeah, going to be a big day. Really looking forward to it, and we'll try and get through as much as we can in the next half hour.
Yep, absolutely. Before we do that, just a quick word for the great guys at MPH Boilers. They are their podcast sponsors. They've still got those Viessmann boilers on offer. The all-important links are in the description below. If your boiler's on the blink, folks, then do give them a call. Right, let's get stuck in. As Joshua just touched on their news that broke late last night. Bombshell news is that Ridvan Yilmaz is a major doubt after picking up yet another injury ahead of this game. John Souttar is definitely out of the game. This is what the manager had to say. Says just on waiting until the morning of the game before deciding on his starting lineup. He says that that's still the case. There's a clarity on some things, but on some things not. Some players will train for the first time tomorrow, for example. So there's no clarity for that for me right now. John, for sure, will not be available. Leon, there is a possibility. At the end of the Hearts game, you get 2 goals against with a player, Yilmaz, who comes in but hurts himself again during that moment. He came in my office the next day with tears in his eyes to tell me he felt something again. So we will see if we can get him fit for this cup final. So there you go, folks. Ridvan Yilmaz a doubt. John Souttar definitely out of the game, which is a blow. Let's hope Leon Balogun is past fit for it. Rangers lacking in numbers in the back line. Joshua, I know the comments are coming in on Ridvan. He's just, unfortunately, he's just injury prone. That's the sad reality.
Yeah, it was not the news that I'm sure Rangers supporters wanted to hear. Obviously, Clement in his broadcast press conference said that he wouldn't go into injury details. This was released later from the embargoed section of the press conference done with the newspapers. So he's not saying that Ridvan is definitely out. I think that's important to stress. But if you're coming into the manager's office with tears in your eyes on the Monday, then how likely is it that you start on the Saturday? What I think is important to point out, and I know you and Chris did this yesterday, Derek, after the press conference, Clement did say that he will take risks with players effectively in a way that he would not usually, because there's no games after this and just the nature of the injury situation that continues to hamper Rangers. I mean, the last time that Ridvan and Tavernier started together prior to, I think, the game against Dundee, it was a 5-0 home win over Hearts. The last time that Rangers started with 2 out-and-out wingers and Tavernier and Ridvan together, I think was even before that game. It just goes to show that the drop-off from March, yes, I think there's been complacency in there and all the different issues that we've discussed over the last couple of weeks, but the injury situation has just been, it has hampered Clement so much, and you've seen gradually, I think, the frustration erode away at him over the past few months, in particular, up until the kind of final games of the season. So it's not, he's not saying that Ridvan is definitely out. If he was in, it would give you a huge boost, not only because he can play, but then there's a question of, well, where does Dujon Sterling play? Because not only, Derek, is there a question mark about, will Dujon Sterling have to fill in at left back, but I think there's also a valid question about, will Dujon Sterling have to fill in at centre back? That's where he came on for the final stages, obviously away at Hearts. So it is very in keeping with the course of the season. Rangers don't have much in the way of resource, certainly don't have anything close to a full fit complement. And Clement, I think, doesn't really know, again, as he's outlined, what type of team he's going to have yet, because he's given his team up until today to prove their fitness. So predicting teams is hard enough at the best of times. I think it's going to be even more difficult heading into tomorrow's game.
Yeah, we've got a clip of Clement speaking about injuries, but as you all know, we're on Instagram Live. There's a comment that's come in here, and it's one that we'll address. Dunn1872 says, why did they choose to tell the mainstream media after telling fan media he won't discuss this info? There's 2 parts of the press conferences, buddy, the broadcast section and the embargoed written section, the fan media and ourselves and likes it. Sky and the likes are all part of the broadcast section, and then he conducts it then at written embargoed section a little bit later on. I've got to say, I have no idea why he never divulged that information to the broadcast section, but chose to do so to the written embargoed section. Joshua, I have no idea why he's done that. Do you have any idea?
No, I mean, yeah, no, but it's pretty common for, obviously, people might not know this, but it's pretty common for managers to say different things when they're speaking in different aspects of the press conference. Obviously, it's much more obvious down south, whereby managers are conducting so many interviews with different media outlets after games. Is he being tactical by not saying it in front of the cameras and then saying it in an
but I don't get, because there's still a day to go. It's still a day and a bit to go until the game, so I don't understand why. I don't think that's going to factor into what Celtic are going to do to it, in all honesty.
No.
So I just find it a wee bit strange.
No, and he is someone who tends to, I think, play it pretty straight. Although I will go back to, I remember away at Benfica when Rangers had, again, another injury, really bad injury situation. And he did go on in his broadcast interview quite a lot about, maybe I'll have to change shape and I'm having to consider this and consider that. And that obviously didn't materialise. So you never know what is going to happen. Obviously, Ridvan isn't definitively out. Feels unlikely that he's going to be able to play a full 90 minutes. He did obviously lose his man and at the end of I think it was Tagawa for the Hearts equalising goal in extra time. Injury time, didn't he? And he perhaps didn't look fully fit towards the end of that match. So there's going to be a lot riding on Rangers team selection. We're going to get into discuss Derek, who plays in midfield. Does John Lundstram come back in? All these different considerations. Will Clement shift the shape? What is, I think, important to outline is he's probably having to adapt even today to see who is fit, who is training, and what does that enable him to do against Celtic tomorrow, because he's not had that luxury in the week leading up to the game.
Yep, let's fire up the clip. We've got a couple of Clement, what he's had to say yesterday. Hopefully this is the one he talks about injury. So here we go.
So we're not speaking about injections, but all the players want to play this game. All of them, all in the dressing room. And some want to go really on the edge to be there, to play that game. So we're going to need to make smart decisions about that. How many minutes they can do without it's too much risk, of course. But they want to do it, and that's already the main thing.
The manager there saying he's going to have to think about taking risks, Joshua. Whether that Ridvan is part of those, that it will be risked in the game, who knows? I certainly think that they're going to have to risk Leon Balogun, because a backline of Ben Davis and Leon King does not fill me with confidence, I've got to admit.
Yeah, well, obviously the news that did come out of that section is that John Souttar is definitely out, which is a blow because, again, just down to the basics of depth, but Souttar would probably have been Rangers' first choice in that right centre-back side if he had been fit, Derek. So Leon Balogun was potentially going to be back for the Hearts game, which would give you a bit of confidence that a week on he will be fit to face Celtic on Saturday. But yeah, a continuation of what we've seen for the last number of months. Clement, again, speaking yesterday, reiterated that he has never seen a situation like this before with injured players, where he's never been able to, he came in and he wasn't able to have a full complement, and he's never been able to build up to that full complement. Obviously, it's been largely in the attacking areas that we've seen that impact Rangers from maybe March and April time, and at the moment it is the defence, which is a lot. There's a lot of unknowns about who starts across that back four. Davies, you'd imagine, will definitely play. Tavernier will obviously definitely play. We think those two other positions are very much going to be up for grabs, and I think will be something that Clement is deciding pretty late in the day, and that's before we consider, well, will he change his shape? Will he do something different? I think he probably won't, but will he adapt somewhat in midfield to try and compensate for where Rangers have struggled against Celtic? But again, what is his resources to do that? Because unfortunately, he can't play Dujon Sterling in four different positions at once.
Yeah, there's a comment that's come in here from Ian. He says, Lundstram and Borna are going to start. I can feel it. He was quizzed on John Lundstram, incidentally, the manager. He was asked that a lot of fans hope Lundstram won't play. Is that a big call for you? I will never make decisions about what fans are thinking, because that's emotion and they don't see training. They don't know how the players are. I don't need to answer that question about John starting or not. It's about the decision with my staff, about what I see in training and have seen in the last couple of months in the games. I've got to say, I don't care if John Lundstram is performing like Diego Maradona in training, Joshua, he's not suitable for this game. It's proven in recent Old Firm matches. I don't want him starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I've obviously not been on for a couple of days, but never miss a Rangers review, show Derek. And that.
Good stuff.
Hearing you make your feelings known about Lundstrom. And listen, again, it's difficult for Clement probably because what type of options does he have? Let's say, for example, that Sterling is taken into the defence in some capacity, which is likely. Even if Ridvan does make it, is he going to make it for 90 minutes? When was the last time he played 90 minutes? Certainly before injury. Even if Leon Balogun does make it, is he going to make it for the whole 90 minutes? Or is someone else going to have to come in and play 30 minutes there? So it is perhaps unlikely, therefore, that you get to build the midfield around Dujon Sterling, which is what people have wanted in Old Firm games. And obviously Sterling played there in the Old Firm at New Year, didn't he? It comes down a lot to the options that Clement does have. He's not a manager who I think will be, he doesn't play to the crowd as a manager. I don't know if you agree with me on that, but in his comments, I think he's quite straightforward and people like that. But at times it's also important to play the politics of being a manager. He will pick the team, I'm sure, that he thinks is going to give himself the best opportunity of lifting that trophy. This is very likely to be John Lundstrom's last game for Rangers. I think there are a lot of fans who don't want to see him play because, as you say, Derek, of what happened in the last Old Firm game. Again, will come down to what type of options does Clement have, because Lundstrom will be fresh. He won't have played in, 2 weeks, around about 2 weeks exactly, since he got that sending off. Would Clement throw him in over Nico Raskin? Potentially, because he's done it for a lot of his managerial tenure so far. It's not the midfield that I would necessarily select. I think a lot of people in an ideal world would have Dujon Sterling in the middle of the pitch. But again, he's probably going to be required elsewhere, isn't he?
Yeah, I just don't think he can be trusted, to be honest. Stephen with the point. Lunny won't be here next year, and after that shocking tackle, he shouldn't start. Totally agree. I wouldn't even have him in the squad, to be honest with you. I think that Rangers should have better options available. I mean, Ryan Jack, as Steve Clark said, has been fit for the last couple of weeks. If he's fit enough, then he should be ahead of John Lundstrom. And we've got our predicted lineups. Joshua, you're going to fire up on the screen. 2 interesting starting 11s that we've gone for tomorrow, and this looks like you've got Sterling in twice, so
that's not yours. Then I'll get mine back up. You've got Raskin and Diamande in midfield. I'll put mine back up while I sort yours there. But this is mine. I'll explain myself. I'm going on the optimistic presumption that Ridvan might well make it. Again, that's based on Clement's comments that came out last night. That's not necessarily likely, but who doesn't love an optimist? So we'll go with an optimistic point of view. I don't think Clement will change shape, and I'm not one to necessarily think rip it up and start again, because your football can be pretty reactionary. But looking at the last couple of Old Firm games, I don't think Rangers can do the same thing. And what they've done in the last 2 Old Firm games, I think, is sat in a bit of a mid-block and went for a man-to-man approach. And a man-to-man approach can work, of course, but I think it works more often when you're really aggressive, when you're playing on the front foot. And Rangers haven't really started these Old Firm games on the front foot. Therefore, I would be mindful to maybe go with a slightly more industrial midfield. Todd Cantwell, I know we'll come on to speak about him. Again, Clement probably isn't going to go for a 4-3-3. He probably will go for a 4-2-3-1. You'd hope that Abdallah Sima, given that he has been fit for a week or so now, that he will be able to play from the start. Again, there's the question of, do you maybe keep him for the last hour? The thing is, though, Derek, Rangers haven't started these games nearly well enough over the past 2 years to really play the long game, I would argue. They've only scored the first goal in one of the last 12 Old Firm games, I believe, is the stat. If they risk, say, playing Ridvan and Sima for the last 30 minutes, then I think you risk your team being in a bad position, as has been the case, especially at Parkhead and, of course, at Ibrox over the last few encounters. So if it was me picking the team, I'd probably go for something like this. I'd change the shape off the ball somewhat. If you're going to go man for man, I think you need to go really aggressive. The important point for me, Derek, is that if you do this same thing, you're probably going to get the same results. And that result is that if you give Celtic the ball, if you give them that extra man in the midfield, we saw in that game at Parkhead how easily they were able to get Callum McGregor on the ball with those third man combinations. I don't think Rangers can risk doing the same thing. They certainly can't start a midfield with Tom Lawrence and John Lundstrom, because that hasn't worked in the last 2 games. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. You can talk us through your team without having it in front of you.
Stick it up.
My clerical error.
Stick it up anyway. Because There's a comment coming in. Tunnock says, 2 Sterlings in the team would be ideal. It absolutely would be ideal. In fact, I'd have a full team of Dujon Sterlings in there. But I'll talk you through this. For me, as I touched on, I really hope that Leon Balogun is fit. If he's not, then Leon King will start. For me, James Tavernier is a weak link at this moment in time. 2 flanks are a concern for me. Rangers losing cheap goals on either flank. Celtic will look to exploit both areas of the pitch. I had Ridvan in before the news last night, so I'm starting Robbie Fraser on the left. I know that some people feel that Borna will come back in, and that may well be the case, but I'd start Robbie Fraser out on the left, which would be a big call, of course, but he started at Tynecastle. He can start at Hampden. On the right, I've got Dujon Sterling just because it's his natural position. It was what he was brought in. He played there for Stoke. He'll give Rangers more solidity on that right-hand side. And I've got Jack and Raskin in the middle of the park. I've got Jack coming back in. Listen, as I touched on there, if he's fit enough to play, then play him. Todd Cantwell was a big shout for me. We need a big performance from him. I can't remember the last time we really got a display in a big game. I'm discounting the Old Firm game at the tail end of last season. I want him to produce when it really matters. And this is it for me. It's either show up or be shipped out. I think in the summertime he was brought in for these big games, and it's about time he starts producing. So I really want to see a performance from him. I would ask James Tavernier just to concentrate on the offensive side of his game. Don't worry too much about the defensive fact, although I would be looking for him to combine with Dujon Sterling and help him out at various points. But yeah, I'd be moving Tav up. There is a shout, of course, for Ross McCausland to start, given that he's in form, scored 2 and 2. I get that. I've got Abdallah Sima on the left as opposed to Fabio Silva, even though I thought Silva performed relatively well at Parkhead. I think Sima is just an all-round better option over on that left-hand side. And Dessers is up front because there is no one else. So that is my team. Whether that comes to fruition or not, who knows. But I've gone for Tav in the more advanced role, Joshua. I know that you're dead against that in the past, but for me, it's a weak link, is it not, if you play him at right back?
Well, just on your point of Silva, I agree that Silva was one of Rangers' better players in the last Old Firm game. Again, he's I think played out of position for a lot of the time that he has been there. The reason I was going with Sima on the right is because I think Sima up against Greg Taylor is an area where Rangers can create a bit of a mismatch. So we'll see if he's fit for the whole 90 minutes, but that's why I'd probably play him on that side. I think that helped turn the Old Firm game in the 3-3 draw at Ibrox in April time. I generally have been against the move Tavernier up because no manager has done it apart from, what was it, Mark Warburton did it in I think it was actually an Old Firm game at Hampden when Lee Hodgson played it right back against Scott Sinclair. Testing my Rangers trivia here, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that was the time where he did that. But no manager has done that generally because Tavernier is a right back. He has weakness as a right back, but he has a lot of strengths as a right back. Now, where I think your observation is right, Derek, is that has clearly been an area where Celtic have got the upper hand. Much like I'm saying, I think if you played Sima on Greg Taylor, if you played him on Greg Taylor in 5 of the last Old Firm games, I think Rangers would have probably had a lot of joy in that position. It's been the exact same with Dyson Maeda up against James Tavernier. And obviously the moment leading to that free own goal Rangers conceded at Ibrox epitomises that, but also the lead up to John Lundstrom's own goal when Tavernier let that cross come in. Didn't get close enough to Maeda. So that's why in my predicted team, I have Dujon Sterling kind of on the right side of that midfield 3 to offer a little bit more support. But it is such a guessing game at the moment because we don't know. If we knew this is the team that Rangers are going to have, this is the players they're going to have fit and available, this is the selection that Clement will go with. When he does have everyone fit and available, it becomes a bit easier. But I don't think we even really know what Clement would play as his strongest team because he's not had that as a possibility. If you had Oscar Cortez and Danilo and Abdallah Sima fit for tomorrow, then you know who your wide players are. You probably know who your starting striker is, and you can adapt around that. I agree with you on Todd Cantwell. He probably will play at Hampden tomorrow. Tom Lawrence definitely hasn't done enough in the last 2 games to justify a starting position against Celtic. For me, Cantwell's been slightly unlucky in some regards because if you look at the Old Firm games he has played in this season, at the start of the season, he was playing in a bit of a weird position in that 1-0 defeat. And he's obviously missed out in the last 2 games and he's not had the opportunity to impact things. He's looked good in the last couple of games for Rangers. Everyone knows what a good player he can be. He's had an injury-disrupted season. All these usual caveats. But you're right, you also need to step up in this game if you want to be a successful Rangers player. And I'll put it back to you, Derek. When was the last time that a Rangers player, a Rangers attacker really grabbed an Old Firm game and won it and stood out? You're going back 2-3 years, probably looking at Roof in that 4-1 game at the end of the 55 season, or going back to Ryan Kent in a couple of seasons before, Morelos sparingly. You're going back a long way to try and find those examples. And that is what Rangers will need tomorrow. And that's what Clement and Tavernier emphasised, and what really worked against them around this time last year when they came close to getting a result against Celtic, but just weren't able to. They need players to have the personality, to have the authority to be able to stand up and create big moments. And if you're Philippe Clement, you're probably looking at Todd Cantwell as a player who can do that. The question is, will he tomorrow at Hampden?
Yeah, just on that forward line, Joshua, I wanted to bring this up because he scored again last night. I think that's 10 goals in 11 league games for Utrecht. Sam Lammers is tearing it up in the Eredivisie. Well-taken goal last night as Utrecht beat Sparta Rotterdam by 3-1. Ali McCoy said this week that he should be brought back and for Philippe Clement to have another look at him. I've seen Utrecht fans saying, why on earth did Rangers not play him in his proper position as a number 9? It is where he's playing now, and he is certainly tearing it up over there. Should Rangers have another look at him and play him in his more suited position?
Well, I don't know. That's quite a divisive one, isn't it? I mean, the thing is, if you looked at, let's say hypothetically, Derek, that Rangers were linked with Lammers and he hadn't moved to the club last season, and you were signing a player who had scored, I think it's 11 goals now for Utrecht in the Eredivisie, and that was his record from January until May in the Dutch league. If that was a player that Rangers were linked with, there would obviously be a lot of excitement if you watched Lammers' goals. Obviously, that's not the case. Was he played out of position? I think there was some validity to that argument because you watched him in pre-season and you thought, okay, this role could be really good for him because he can be an extra attacker. He's obviously got the technique and the ability to drop in and play. When you spoke to people about Lammers in the lead up to him moving to Ibrox, and obviously he's had 3 or 4 seasons of kind of jumping around, probably made that move to Atalanta too prematurely. They obviously spent about 11 million euros on him. But what kept coming up when you spoke to people who'd worked with him or knew him was the importance of getting the right environment. And that's why loan moves hadn't really worked for him. He'd never been able to settle, never found the right environment to play football. But people would continually say it's not a question of quality. If you can get him confident, if you can get him into a good position, then he's going to be what I remember one person saying to me, I have no doubts that he will have a successful season. And obviously he has, just not at Ibrox. Pressure comes into a lot of it. Some players are able to play for Rangers, some players are not. If you take a player like Cyril Dessers, who I know still splits opinion, but what I think is you can't really dispute about Dessers is that he has the mentality to come back from setbacks and survive the criticism. I know he was speaking about that yesterday to the BBC, and survive a start to the season that not many people were able to. Someone like Lammers, for example, is not able to come back from the brink in that same description. What Rangers will be looking at, I'm sure, is the fact that they now have a player and an asset who's probably worth more to them than when they bought him, and that puts them in a strong position because Clement has a lot of rebuilding to do. Should they have played him as a number 9? Perhaps, but again, you looked at some of his finishing at the start of the season and it didn't scream out a player who you wanted to be shooting more. I just think if you compare that finish last night, because it's at the front of my mind, to some of the misses we saw him make at Ibrox, not least in that first Old Firm game of the season, it is a player playing with confidence, and we probably can't underestimate confidence in football, and we can't underestimate sometimes the pressures of playing for a club and at a stadium like Rangers and at Ibrox.
Yeah, Stephen says play Lammers at 9 in pre-season, see what he does. Listen, he's enjoying his football over there at Utrecht. A lot of fans as well seen last night saying, oh, we'll get our money back. Rangers should be demanding probably double what they paid for him if he continues this. There'll be big clubs in Holland seeing what he's doing there. The likes of Feyenoord, PSV, I would not be surprised if either of those were looking to prize him away. Rangers should be seeking a huge... a big fee for Sam Lammers, upwards of maybe even hitting £10 million if he keeps this up. I mean, if Sam Lammers was doing this, Joshua, and Rangers, as Johnny said when we were on with him a couple of weeks ago, if he was doing this and Rangers were interested in him, you'd be looking at probably £8, £9, £10 million for him.
Yeah, definitely. And he's obviously 26, so kind of coming into the prime of his career at Utrecht. Very keen, obviously, to keep him at the club. And they will, I'm sure, pitch it that is where he's going to have a successful time. But as you say, Derek, if you've scored that number of goals, and this is the thing with Lammers, if you look back in his career to when he went out on loan to, I think it was Herenveen from PSV, he'd scored not as many goals, but he'd scored something like 15, 16 goals in the Eredivisie, and came back to PSV, didn't quite get into the starting 11, then had that bad injury, and then maybe a little bit of a lack of patience, maybe a move that he wouldn't make again in hindsight, went to Atalanta and again couldn't quite get into the team. You watched him in pre-season, and I remember a lot of people who said he was going to be a success took a lot of flack for it, because you could see that as a player, he could do things with the ball that other players could not. But then you watched him in certain moments, certain finishes, and he just didn't have that. He didn't have the belief in his ability. He looked like a player who jumped about from loan move to loan move to loan move and hadn't really been able to reach expectations in his career. But I agree with you. If Rangers were interested in him now, and he'd went to, let's say he'd went straight from Atalanta to Utrecht and had been able to create that form over the course of a season and not just for the last 4 months, you'd be looking at a lot more than the roughly $3.5 million that Rangers paid for him about this time last year.
Yeah, I don't want Rangers to sell him short here. If they are moving him on in the summer, they should be demanding top drawer money. Right, let's get to another point that came in. Well, first of all, can we help Gary out here, folks? He says, lads, I'm off to York this morning. Does anyone know of a good pub to watch the match? Might be a bit of a mission, as the FA Cup final will be showing everywhere. So if you can help Gary out, I'm not sure, Gary, about pubs around about that neck of the woods, but if you can help Gary out, then please do so. There you go. I'll let me post up another clip from Clement from yesterday's press conference. He was asked, but what do you need to show? Do you need to show you can beat Celtic heading into what will be a summer rebuild? This is what he had to say.
Player can change the mind to stay if you make something really special out of this game. That can always happen. But I didn't say a lot. So you guys making the study bigger and bigger. And it's also difficult to say what is a lot or what is... We need to make changes. It's clear. Some things happened this season that were not good enough. And it's ambition to make the club better and make the team better. So it's clear we need to do that towards next summer, next season. But first we need to focus now on the now, on this moment, and to grab the moment, because if I look back at these last 3 Old Firms where I was with the team, we didn't grab the moments in those games. Not in our offensive actions where we had enough chances to score more goals. Not in our defensive actions, and for sure not by taking 2 times a red card. Because that changed also a lot, of course, of the scenario of the game. So I expect now 90 minutes or 120 minutes at least to have 11 players on the pitch all the time, and to have better starts also.
Yep, better start is vital tomorrow, Joshua, and Rangers need to keep 11 men on the pitch at all times. We cannot have another mountain to climb. Rangers need to keep calm and measured, no rash challenges. And I think that's key if Rangers are going to go on and win this game tomorrow.
Yeah, Chris and I have a preview on the website today, and we look into all these different things to start. Will Clement throw a bit of a curveball with the starting lineup? Who does he start in the midfield? There's a lot of decisions to be made tomorrow. And Clement is right in saying, especially that first Old Firm game, the 2-1 game, I think Rangers probably edged it on chances created. They had that big Dessers moment. They had a number of moments with Sima and McCausland and Cantwell in the final third, just lacked decision makers. The last 2 games, I think, have been different. The 3-3 game at Ibrox, Celtic far superior, especially in the midfield in the first half. Obviously, the recent game at Parkhead as well. I don't think that Rangers ever gave themselves an opportunity with the type of start that we have seen so often before. And I think watching on, Derek, what people will want to see tomorrow, obviously, is Rangers go win the Scottish Cup. But it needs to be something different. It needs to be a break from the Old Firm pattern that has been in place now for 2 to 3 seasons, where Rangers concede avoidable goals or they miss certain chances or they're outplayed in midfield. All these patterns that have come up time and time again under different managers on both sides, and they need players who are going to go and enjoy this fixture and go and thrive in it. So there needs to be changes from the team that started in the last couple of games. The early goal is so fundamental, because if you lose the early goal in this fixture, it's difficult enough. But the fact that Rangers have lost the early goal in 11 of the last 12 is even worse. Again, we spoke about this building up to the last game, the last game at Parkhead a couple of weeks ago. But the last time that Rangers scored first and won an Old Firm game was that Phil, aside from the 3-0 game at the end of last season, which I'm not counting because it didn't count for much, was the Phil Hollander header right back under the tenureship of Steven Gerrard. That was a while ago. So, yes, there is an opportunity to go and change the narrative. Yes, one game can change everything, but you need to see the evidence of that heading into the new season would certainly not harm Clement's chances of building the mood over summer. Going to be intriguing to see what he does. As I say, I think he needs to do something a little bit different. It depends on the options that he has, though, because especially after that Ridvan news last night, he's not blessed with a fit squad or anything near it. I think he also needs players like Cantwell, like Dessers, to take their moments, because if you go back to obviously the kind of defining two moments of the Old Firm for Rangers this season is probably that Lammers miss and that Dessers miss under Michael Beale and under Philippe Clement. That's not something a manager can control. He needs his players tomorrow to step up in big moments.
Yeah. A few comments before we wrap up. Stephen says, I don't want calm. I want a desire, hunger to win every challenge, win the game. Yeah, cool heads and fire in the bellies, as I think was what we all want tomorrow. We don't want any John Lundstrom losing the head sort of scenarios coming to pass. Just on bars down near York, they might show the game. Kill93 says, Terrace Sports Bar in York for the game. So there you go, Gary. There's a recommendation. Thank you for that, buddy. And we'll finish up with this. Stuart Keane with the point. This was news yesterday that came out. Robbie McCrory linked with Aberdeen. Of course, Kilroos out of contract at Pittodrie at the end of the season. And the Dons said to be keen on signing the Rangers backup goalie. Wouldn't be surprised to see this happen, Joshua. And we know that Liam Kelly on the verge of returning to Ibrox. And for me, McCrory should have... I think he was promised game time at the start of the season under Michael Beale. Jack Butland came in and it never quite happened for him. I think he played one game against Dumbarton in that treacherous Scottish Cup tie, and that's been it. And it has cost him his Scotland chances at the Euros. He should have left last summer.
Yeah, he needs to play games. Yeah. We've covered it a lot of times before, but he's now, 25, 26. He's not... Some players are always young in their career, aren't they? And Robbie McCrory is someone who will always be considered a young player. And I guess in goalkeeper's terms, he kind of is still technically. He had that run at the end of last season where he played well and only conceded one goal, played well in the Old Firm game where he was really quick off his line on a number of occasions. And obviously when Rangers needed him, especially in that run just before Steven Gerrard left around the COVID time, he played two important games there, didn't he? In that last Old Firm victory where Rangers scored first. But pretty clear he needs to play games, expecting to leave Rangers this summer. And he's for the cliche, he is not young anymore. And I'm sure if he is to depart, he'll go with a lot of best wishes to go and make a solid career. He's waited around, and sometimes in football you just need the right situation, the right circumstance to get your chance. Look at Ross McCausland. He wasn't a player that was at the forefront of everyone's minds to break into the Rangers team this season. When Rangers went to Hearts a couple of seasons ago before the Europa League final, and they played all the youngsters, the one who didn't come off the bench was Ross McCausland. And yet if you fast forward 2 years on, he's scoring at Tynecastle. He's the one who's actually broken into the first team and cemented his place. So often it's about opportunities, and McCrory might just have to go and look elsewhere to get his, it seems.
Yeah, there are comments saying we should get a swap deal for Bojan Miovski. Yep, I'd be up for that. McCrory for Miovski, I'd be all on board for that sort of deal. Right, that will do us there. Thank you to each and every one of you for tuning into the show this morning, folks. It's much appreciated. Just a heads up of what is to come. Tomorrow we'll have all the usual build-up from Hampden. We're all in attendance there. Joshua, myself, Chris, and Stevie will be there as well. So, full squad heading out to the National Stadium. So we'll have the pre-match build-up. We'll have the post-match reaction as well. So we hope you can join us for that. Just a few videos on YouTube to make you aware of. Yesterday, for those of you that are Rangers Review Extra members, I spoke to a Bulgarian journalist, very insightful on Jose Cordoba. He gave us a bit of information on what we can expect from the big centre half. So I'd urge you to go and check it out if you are members on the Rangers View Extra channel. There's also the press conference reaction video, myself and Chris on there. And there's also the Q&A show. Ali Bain joined me yesterday for that. So a number of interesting questions were fired up. On the website this morning, Joshua and Chris have answered a few of your questions ahead of tomorrow's big game as well. So something to check out today, and later on ahead and heading into tomorrow, myself, Joshua and Chris's predicted teams will be on the website. So do plenty of Rangers content coming your way, both on the YouTube and on the website. Kenneth says you're not covering Walter's unveiling. We are. Joshua, you're heading to Ibrox tomorrow, you're not?
Yes, I will be there, Kenneth. You will be glad to know. So looking forward to that. 12 o'clock, I believe the kind of procession is unfolding, so we will have full coverage of that as well before we get to Hampden.
Yeah, so there you go. Right, folks, we'll speak to you tomorrow morning. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Bye for now.